I would like to call Louis, and Louis is an award-winning production artist. I mean, he also writes and produces music, and we were really excited for him to wrap this creative session up, because very often what we find is that the copywriting is not enough. Your production values can add a huge amount to the effectiveness of an ad, and even the aesthetics of an ad. So Louis, Enslin, we welcome you, and the floor is yours.
Sure. Thank you. Just want to make sure everyone can hear me out there. Yeah, there's been a lot said. It's very interesting. There's been a lot of things I think that might echo in my presentation as well. But let me just share my screen here. Let me just do this. Cool. I'm sure everyone can see my screen. So yeah, so basically, I'm gonna just talk to you guys. As I said, I think there's a lot being said that I might echo in this, but I'm gonna basically just chat to you about bringing radio scripts to life and the value of exploring different options and different executions in it. So, firstly, I'm going to just sort of start as a bit of an experiment. This was going to be a lot nicer in real life. So excuse it, my slides aren't as cool as all the other people's slides. I feel a bit left out, but it's okay. So yeah, let's just start this by means of a little experiment. I hope the audio levels and stuff's fine. Excuse my accents, but here goes. So hi. Body sound. Right above.
Louis, the music's very loud.
So, let me just turn it down. There we go. Hi, I'm Louis Enslin. I'm from Prodigy Sound. So, hey Lou, right above. Hi, I'm Louis from Prodigy Sound. I own Prodigy Sound. Hey Lou, right above and heard. Hello, I'm Louis Enslin from Prodigy Sound. I co-own Hey Lou, right above and heard. Now, yeah, sorry for that extremely bad rendition of my acting skills. But I think the point I was trying to make is that some of you might have liked me more and some of you might have liked me less, depending on something as simple as a slide template, which is terrible, and also music genre, and of course, my terrible accents. These simple elements sort of paint a mental image of who I am and could trigger an immediate like or dislike for me. So if I had to introduce myself and find my perfect soundtrack that represents me, firstly, that would take quite a bit of time. And even after that, I need to consider that not everyone would get the right impression of me. For example, some of you might hate hard rock music, as I just blasted you with that because the levels were all over the show. Or because you're teenage, you have a teenager at home that plays it loud all the time. Some of you might have an ex obsessed with classical music and associate the classical music with your ex when you hear it. But at the end of the day, for all of us, music triggers something with an ultimate good or bad outcome. And also the reality is people just like different things. I recently finished my master's thesis in the creative media industry, and an interesting study that came up that formed the foundation of my thesis was by a scientist called Enslin. So he developed a framework called the Breg-Vima framework, which aimed to explain a person's emotional judgment process when listening to music. And I think the other people touched on that a little bit. Just something gets triggered. I know Natalie just mentioned maybe about the food that's in the cupboard at the moment. You might sit and, you know, the association with that food and the environment we are in at the moment becomes infused. And that could ultimately have a good or bad outcome. And as she said, there's a good opportunity for brands to tackle that at the moment. But basically, he if you guys can see that on the screen, it focused on the emotional connection between music and a listener and the aesthetic judgment that takes place. So there's a few things in the input. Then there's a few aesthetic criteria through filtering, the judgment process, and an ultimate outcome of a liking or disliking for a piece of music. So although this is related very much to music, I'll hopefully explain just now how it comes into to radio ads, and from a production point of view, how we use these tools and how we have to consider them when producing radio ads, and not just award-winning ads. I think, you know, your day-to-day as well. Another interesting study was actually about was a scientist called Carbon regarding the perception in a museum. Then he found that people spend very different amounts of time in front of different pieces of artwork. And this was due to purely their preference and the interest that a certain piece of artwork might spark in an individual. Another one by Purick, who explained the perception of art as a complex relation between visual stimuli and the personal understanding of them. And this could go again for audio as well. And there's numerous factors, including social, cultural, gender, political, and racial factors that affect how we see a piece of art. So there's sort of 3 points I want to just highlight regarding Justin's study that I think is something to bear in mind when it comes to the production of audio. And I say audio, radio, there's been a lot of talk about radio ads, 30 longer mediums and all this stuff. I think there's a space for all of that. And I think all of them do a different job in a certain way. But I just want to touch on these things that's quite interesting and something to maybe just bear in mind for all of us. So his fifth point in
Louis,
this sort
I'm sorry to
Yes.
interrupt, Louis. We're just getting some feedback that some folks are struggling to hear you. Could you talk
is that
more
better?
directly into the mic? That'll
Yeah.
be much better. Thank you.
That better. Cool. Apologies for that. So there's just, these 3 elements just to sort of bear in mind when producing audio. The fifth point that he highlights is visual imagery. He explains it as the inner images of an emotional character conjured up by the listener through metamorphical mapping of musical structure. Episodic memory is the conscious recollection of a particular event, something that Natalie just mentioned. And the aesthetic judgment, which is the subjective evaluation of music based on a few individual set of weighted criteria. So the impact that this have on audio is, if you look at visual imagery, you can create a visual world just through audio, just through music and sound, literally bringing audio to life. On his episodic memory, you can remind people of certain events in their personal life by using music. So this could either, again, have a good or bad outcome. And the 7th point is you can persuade people to either react positively or negatively to a piece of media based on your music choice. So how does it correspond to radio ads? Well, it hopefully highlights the fact that we all like and drawn to different things. There is no one size fit all solution. There is background to everyone. There's, for example, music used in an advert could lead to an emotional outcome of essentially liking or disliking it. I mean, I'm not sure if you've ever listened to a radio advert and completely missed the message just because you're either distracted by the music that you really disliked. I mean, I've done it plenty of times. There's a particular ad on a radio station I listen to, and every time it comes up, I actually just want to change the station because it annoys me to that point. And I think more thought has to be given to the music selection in a particular advert. If for that specific one, I know sometimes we refresh ads and might do cut down to different versions of it just to keep it on top of mind. If that particular ad would have been refreshed with a different piece of music, I might have dialed in, and I'm sure there's cases where all of us would have had the same reaction to that. So you can see that something as simple as music could impact your communication. This is important to consider, as one have to bear in mind that whatever you choose have to reflect your target market, the tone of the product or advert that you're producing, the tone of the client, and the feeling you'd like to evoke, either subliminal or explicit. I mean, if you put a hard rock piece of music on it for possibly a tire brand commercial, that's the feeling you want to evoke. Sometimes subliminal music that we add into it, or sound design we add to it, creates a subliminal feeling of peace, anxiousness or whatever feeling you want to evoke. And I think it's important to consider that. Often we as content producers, we at the bottom of the food chain. So you got you guys, the clients, the media buyers, the agencies, and the copywriters and creatives, but ultimately it's us that have to produce these ads. We have to sort of take what all you guys want to do, filter it, decide on the best sort of treatment on it, and basically make something that you're happy with. And often we're in a position where we might have a strong preference towards a certain style of music for brand or particular advert, but the client might have a strong dislike towards that particular genre of music or song due to personal reasons, like Justin explained above. I mean, it might be reminding you of something, and that could impact your ad negatively. This has happened often to us, and one has to bear in mind that our job, also the people like Sanelli and them, the copywriters, creatives, our job is to stay as neutral as possible and focus on the brand and the specific ad that we're producing at the moment. You have to bear in mind, I think I mentioned later as well, that we literally see and hear hundreds and hundreds of ads every day, every month, every year that comes through us. We have a relatively broad understanding and broad knowledge of what's out there and different brands, competing brands. And I think sometimes we're in a position where that's not really, it's not about being valued, but that's not understood. And we like, even though you've been through all the processes to get to us, don't neglect the info and the sort of experience us as engineers and the content producers can add to your project. So back to my point, when I got approached to speak on this particular topic, Britta contacted me, and it was basically based on South Africa's strong radio presence in the international award shows like Cannes Lions, London Internationals, One Show, DNAD, and all of them. And the question posed to me was, well, why do we do so well at these shows, yet it seems that the majority of adverts locally lack some of that magic and life? It's a relatively straightforward answer and a bit of a twofold one. The one is, I think you guys have to bear in mind that a lot of those award show ads, the proactive ads, it's ads made for advertisers. And that puts a different spin on it. So it's not to say that it's not good or can't work for your product or your brand, but it's a different approach creating something like that. It's like, apologies of a lot of people who like jazz, but it's like jazz. Jazz is, for me, music for musicians. It's very intellectual. I know Natalie mentioned about conflicting messages and keep it clear and simple. And I think you guys have to bear in mind that a lot of those things are created for people not possibly in your target market. So that's the one side of it. It's not to say it's bad or anything like that. It's just you have to put it in context. It's not even the stuff that Sanelli played. I've worked on most of those. A lot of those wasn't necessarily directed at the consumer that's going to go either stay at Town Lodge or the Vauxhall driver, or I think the other one he played was the Doom ad that we did for Ogilvy last year. I think the intention for them was it's more of a brand ad, if that makes sense, which was made for advertisers. The public might not react to it, or a very small portion might, based on exactly, again, what Natalie mentioned earlier. But so that's the one side of it. I think the other side of it is we need, let me just go to my next slide here, sorry, is these five basic things is time, money, trust. Brave clients have been mentioned before, and we need to be realistic. So from a time point of view, we need time to explore different executions and ideas. There are many ways to skin a cat, and I'll play some of it for you a little bit later. We need money to pay for talent like voiceover artists to try different ideas. There's no, and I think Sanelli mentioned it in one of his Q&As, that, what does it take to craft these things? It's like, bear in mind, you're not going to come in once to the studio, once to me, get it done, and there you go. There's very few radio ads that work like that. Also, what you have to bear in mind, we often get asked to, or we will get played a reference, let's take for argument's sake, Transformers. So there'll be a radio script written around the Transformer movie, and they're like, cool, we book half an hour for the voiceover, we book an hour for you to find some sound effects and music, and half an hour for the client. So it's a 2-hour job. And yes, we can do it to a certain degree. I think us in South Africa, we used to multitasking a lot, especially from a production point of view. It's hands-on for everyone, and we are multidisciplinary, which is not necessarily like that in some other countries. But we are put under such pressure to perform and to create something amazing within that small little bit of time. And yeah, we can do it, but it's not going to be amazing. And I think what I sometimes say to clients, you have to bear in mind. So if you have to look at something like Transformers, or there's a TV program, can't think of the Lost. I think it was Lost. There was an article written about how long it takes him to do one episode. Now, bear in mind, the episode's 50 minutes, but I think there's 6 engineers that work on one episode, and it takes them a week. The first engineer literally just cleans up all the sync sounds, so all the dialogue, the live stuff shot on camera. It takes him, I think, pretty much most of the week to do it. There's another one that just lays Foley sound effects, so that'll be all the real sounds, a phone ringing, footsteps, whatever. There's another engineer that all works on all the sound design, the more abstract design elements of it, which takes him about a week. Then there's the composer who composes the music for that one episode, takes him the week to do it. And then the 6th person just mixes. So he'll get the sessions and the stems and all the elements from all those people, and it'll take him 2 days to mix one episode. So there you have 6 people working on 5 or 6, sorry, I can't count. Working on one episode takes them a week to do it. And often we are put under pressure because the client or the script dictates you have to do this or this. And we're like, well, it doesn't sound like the real thing. And I'm like, yeah, it won't, because I had half an hour to do what 5 people do pretty much in a week. And I think it's just something important to relate back to clients. I mean, you know, I think most of the participants in this, you guys work more from media buying, the actual clients, agencies and stuff. And I think from a production point of view, there's so much that we can do more given just a little bit more time, which obviously sometimes translates into money. Back to my point, trust. We need clients to trust us. And I think that trusting and brave clients goes hand in hand with some of the previous things speakers mentioned. Again, you have to bear in mind, we literally work on hundreds of radio and TV ads monthly. We see and hear all sorts from everybody. We know what your competitors do. It's not that I'll give you inside info on that, but bear in mind that, you know, if we choose maybe or suggest a different kind of music that what you might want, we've got good reason for that. It might be because a competitive client was in 2 days ago and they had something similar to what you had, and, you know, take that and just work with us with that, because we might have some info that you might not. And again, we can't share that, but that's why we sometimes suggest certain things. We need brave clients that allows us to push the boundaries, to try new things, to break a little bit out of the box. And also, I think you need to be realistic. Not all ads are potential award winners. There's the question that comes up about duration. Not all ads work in a 30-second space. Some brand ads needs to be longer. It needs to tell a story. It needs to be a bit abstract. It needs to be a little bit out there, weird, with different messaging, because it appeals to a certain target market. It resonates with certain people, but not all of it's like that. There's nothing wrong with a retail sell X at 50% discounted price of Y. That's fine. There's nothing wrong with those reminders, but just be realistic about what you are selling, who you're selling it to, and also what you're wanting to produce. Not you. If we're going to come in and you got a sort of a half-baked script, you book 2 hours and you think this is going to be the next award-winning piece, it's most likely not, because that's not how these things work. And that's fine. There's different strokes for different folks. There's different executions for different ads. So to conclude, I think, sorry, I'm also just cautious of time. To conclude, all the credit goes to the creatives and the writers for doing amazing radio. I've been privileged to work on some of the ones who won awards all over the world. And you guys' jobs are harder than mine. I don't necessarily know all the ins and outs, including the hoops that you have to jump through to sell the concept before it comes to me. But from my side, the production side, I can attest to the value the above points add when producing radio ads or audio pieces to come to life. I mean, each of them has a story, a process that we follow. Each of them explore different voice artists, music, treatments, and executions. I mean, even the spot that Saneli played, the Town Lodge one and the Doom one, I think the Town Lodge one that he played, excuse me, we went through about 6 or 7 music versions. We re-recorded the choir 4 or 5 times. Now, re-recording a choir isn't just one person that comes into the studio. It's 6, 7 that we double up every time. For that, we had to make sure that the music works within the timing, because we couldn't just have an ad that's not a multiple of 5. That's what I normally try and stick to. The Doom thing, that was about, I think we went through about 4 or 5 different voiceover artists to do it. So the value added to the finished product is immense, but it took time, money, trust, and brave clients. And lastly, I mean, I just want to play you some before and afters. Now, I'm not going to play you the whole ad of each of them because I think it's just a little bit long. But and unfortunately, during the lockdown, I can only share the Lucasade's journey. So Lucasade won in 2016 or 2015 Cannes Line Grand Prix at the Louis. It led to Produce Sound, which really blessed with to be the audio and radio company of the year at the London Internationals at 2016. It was the first South African company who ever won this particular award. And that's all due to this ad. And I want to just play you the process of these to show you how spending the time and exploring these different avenues literally ended up where we ended up and sort of how it started. And similar processes was followed with, to name a few, KFC Sadman. That won Grand Prix at Cannes Line as well. I think it's 2017. And the 2018 campaign we did won Grand Prix again. So it was 2 back-to-back Grand Prix. Vodacom Double Blue Tick, Skittles, Castle Free, Student Flights, some of the ones that Saneli played, Town Lodge. All of these, I mean, I can share all of the final ads with you. Unfortunately, during the lockdown, I can't play you the before and afters. But I think all of them basically can attest to the value that was added by just taking the time of these. So anyway, so let me play these. I'm not going to play the whole ad again, but so this was the Lucasade ones. I think this was one of the first ones that sort of put South Africa after Jenny Glover years back on the map. It was by a writer called Dave Kruger, recently moved to Germany. He was from Ogilvy. And I'm just going to play sort of a little bit of the first one. It says pilot, but that was the first sort of finished one sent to client. Hey, do you like these? And obviously back and forth. And I think, to be honest with you, these took, to put it in perspective, these ads took us about 7 or 8 months to finalize. And we went through executions of different music, different voice of artists, different treatments. And what I do, I think Saneli mentioned it earlier. So from a radio point of view, I often do treatments like a director would do a pre-prod on a TV shoot, or, you know, a TV script might get sent to a director, or 5 directors, they all do treatments. I try and get involved early in the process and say, send me your radio script and I'll do a treatment for you. I'll do a pilot, even with my own terrible bad voice, put music to it, and I'll say, well, listen, this ad could be produced and treated in very many different ways. And I think it's very important to know that as well. And this is what we did here. You know, we did the first treatments, went through different ones, and ended up here. So let me play you just again. So this is the sort of original one, how it started. I'll play a section of it.
They will tell you that you are not man enough for an Enrique concert. They will say you cannot handle that much sex appeal. They will tell you that no man can willingly run headfirst, armor-oiled and weapon-limp, into this one-sided battle. It cannot be done. But
cool. I'm just going to play you then. This is sort of weird. And so that was the first, how it started. This is where we ended up with this one.
They said you wouldn't make it this far. They said you'd be out of here in the first 3 songs. But here you are, 92 minutes, 44 seconds into an Enrique concert. Officer Son Rotenbach. So sure, maybe front row VIP tickets were too much. Bad idea, whatever. Because you got stuck there.
And then, sorry, the next one is like the Kids Party one where we started.
there will come a day when you wake without a doll rammed up your nose. There will come a day when you can crawl back into your duvet cave and lie in 1 hour longer. There will come a day when you will not have to enter the battlefield of 6-year-olds' birthday parties. But today,
this is where we ended up with this one.
There will come a day when you will not have to enter the battlefield of kiddies' birthday parties. There will come a day when you will not have to clash with a horde of 3-foot wand-wielding, plastic sword-thrashing offspring. But today is not that day. For today, you shall lead your daughters into the fray, into Yaku's 5th Springbok-themed birthday party, wherein lies that infernal clown bent on audience participation, your participation.
And the last one, which I'll play you the teleconferencing one was I think the favorite of all of them. And seeing we are basically teleconferencing at the moment, I might play just the full one of the last one. Again, just sort of where we ended up, and I hope so far you can just see that the second one's, especially for me, much more entertaining. There's more production value. There's more thought given it. Yes, the script changed a little bit here and there, but again, the value of 6 months of hard work. And let me just play the last one, just as an example.
on this glorious occasion, on this most auspicious of meetings, when you are spent, when you have pushed every ounce of presentation breath and eked out every last drop of enthusiasm, and you have just presented unto the board via teleconference call, and you then dawn upon the painful reality that the call was dropped but eons ago. Despair not, fair friend, for though you may have to thrust out one more hour of pitching and parrying through points.
And where we ended up.
It's 11 p.m. Joburg time. You come so far in this teleconference meeting. You pushed out every ounce of presentation breath, eked out every last drop of enthusiasm, presented unto 7 people in 6 countries, including Albert Zaderman, who's currently attending his best friend's son's bar mitzvah. Suddenly dawns on you that the call was dropped ages ago, maybe somewhere around slide 457. And as concentration wanes in the 7 corners of the globe, you get the conference call going again. And so for the second time today, you thrust out one more hour of pitching and parry through points and punchlines. But despair not. For every drop of ink you shed in this meeting, every word you laid before them is a testament to the fact that you prevailed. And now, you've just hit the thank you slide. And Sanjay from Malaysia, the only one who this whole meeting was shuffled to accommodate, the only one who matters and has signing off power, dials in and says, "Hey guys, what did I miss?" Now you got a problem. I'll tell you what you're gonna do. You're gonna scroll back to slide 1, and you are gonna do the presentation again with Lucasade, with energy.
Sorry, I just had to play that last one through. So, yeah, thanks. I try to do that as quick as possible, but I hope that you can at least see the value of spending a little bit of extra love, time, and money, what that can add to really bring radio ads to life. And again, this is not across the board. I think even the quick in and outs, there's value in trying different things, exploring different options. But for the ones you want to craft your brand ads and stuff like that, I hope that this sort of just showed a little bit of of what that can do, and hopefully it makes sense. Thank you.
Thanks, Louis. For me, I used to work in a production studio many, many moons ago, and it reminds me that people often don't think about the production value of what goes into these ads. TV it's in your face. It's but on the radio side, you guys are unsung heroes. Yeah, keep up the good work. It was really interesting for me. There's one question. I am aware that we are out of time, but I'd like to ask Wayne to wrap up, and then if we could come back and just spend 5 or 10 minutes going to the last Q&A for those of you that can still join us, that would be great. Louis, the one question on yours was about pre-production. What are your feelings about pre-production, and do clients make use of it enough?
I think it's hugely important. I think one client in particular who across the board, as far as I understand, is KFC actually. So what we do for them is they will always do a pilot session. So we will always come in and they'll have the script, we'll thrash it out and we'll sort of do a pilot version of them and send it off. And it's sort of, you can see it as a storyboard for TV. And I think that opportunity is amazing because as I mentioned, some of the sort of studies and stuff regarding emotional reaction to music and content and audio. I mean, there was another one I didn't mention is a study about dopamine being released and the association with the dopamine release levels in your mind compared to audio or music. And it's not just music, it's very interesting. But I think that's hugely important because it gives us the opportunity to explore different things and to say, hey, this is what it looks like on script, this is what it is. But putting it down on paper is on audio is very different. And how do you still feel about that? And I think it saves the client money at the end of the day because we're doing it with maybe agency voices or whatever. We don't have to go the full production on it. But at the end of the day, spending that 1 hour or 2 hours in studio doing a quick pre-prod, a quick pilot, could save you so much at the end, and the impact can be so much greater at the end to do it. And I don't want to just come across as like, give us more money, spend more time, spend more whatever. But I think what I'm trying to illustrate is the value of that, and especially with pre-prod, is immensely valuable. And I think it really comes through at the end product. You know, it's not a live show. You've got one chance, and like this, mess it up. Thanks, cool. Let's move on. People are going to listen to it again and again. You know, as I mentioned, the radio ad on that thing on the particular station, I want to kill the people. I want to phone them and say, please take your radio out of the thing. This is annoying. But I think you have to bear that in mind because people are bombarded with it. If you spend a lot of media, they're going to listen to the thing over and over. So sorry, pre-prod, hugely beneficial. Yeah.
Brilliant. Thank you so much.